Yeah, this Protech Malibu is awesome. It is a fantastic knife, but guys, I gotta tell you, it might just be a little bit boring. Hello out there, and today we're going to be taking a look at a new knife from Protech, and this one is called the Malibu. And the Malibu here is on loan from a buddy of mine named Greg, who wanted to support the channel and send a few knives my way for me to check out. He sent the CRKTs, the old classic ones that I talked about a couple weeks ago, and he also sent this Malibu for me to get my hands on. And it's really exciting to be able to do that because this knife is sold out just about everywhere. The hype train on it is pretty big. It's a big train coming into the station, and for the most part, guys, it is a legit hype train. I mean, this is a very good knife, regardless of what I said in the intro about it being boring, which of course we're going to follow up on. This is a very well executed knife, and I can completely understand why it's sold out in every single place where you can find it. So today what we're going to do, we're going to go through the details, we're going to talk about the knife, go through if this is for you or who should be picking up this knife, and maybe who should pass on it, and why maybe I am just a little bit underwhelmed by this knife, even though, again, I recognize, as almost everybody has recognized, that it is a pretty darn good one. All right, so getting started, what we have is a cutting edge of right around 3.25 inches. So that makes it on the larger side of the standard EDC kind of knife, at least for me. You know, when we look at the bug out, it's a little bit bigger than the bug out in terms of overall length. So it's in between like the mini grip and the griptilian size, if that makes sense. So for me, actually, it's, yeah, maybe on the larger end of the EDC cutting edge, but for overall size, it's pretty much right up my alley. So really happy with it. Here's the PM2, comparable cutting edge, different overall length with that blade to handle ratio. But yeah, the Malibu is a great EDC size, and honestly, if we're just looking at the lines, it's a great EDC design. I'm not sure if I brought out the leak yet, but here's the leak. You know, if we take a look at the Kershaw leak, a very similar kind of blade shape with a little tiny bit of belly, almost a Warncliffe, but still going to be a good utilitarian, all-purpose kind of blade design. Now, and when we talk about the blade, we have CPM 20CV as our steel, which a lot of people are going to be very happy with. I definitely am. I like that steel. I've never had or heard of any experiences from people not liking the way Protech executes their steel. So yeah, definitely a good thing there. This is a very sterile blade, a nice stonewash, as you can see here. The only markings you're going to find are going to be on top, if we can get them in focus, which... let's see, here we go. So we see the Protech, and then I think that's a serial number there. And then on the bottom next to the flipper is where it says CPM 20CV. Cool. So for all you people who don't like markings on the blade, you're in luck. So we do have that going for us. The grind here is flat, and it feels good. It feels like it's pretty thin behind the edge. Nothing too major, so I think, yeah, for all your cutting tasks, it's going to be just fine. And so, yeah, I think when we're talking about the blade and the steel, that is going to be agreeable for just about everybody. When we move on back, a lot of the components, everything else about like the guts of the knife is sort of right here by the pivot. You know, when we look at the rest of the knife, it's just the aluminum frame and not much else. So we have our button lock in the mechanism, and that's what's right here. So let's focus on that. We might skip around. Usually we do like the action and the lock up near the end, but since we're getting to the locking mechanism, and I want to show it right now. So button lock is what Protech does so much of, but what's unique about this is that it is a manual. So there aren't that many manuals from Protech, at least they haven't been doing all that many. There is a recent one, a collaboration with drop.com called the Mordax, which I really loved, and it had ridiculous action. And the hype train about the Malibu is that it was ridiculously drop shutty as well, and yep, that's the truth. I mean, it just drops. It's really well done. And the other thing that I always harp on button locks about, and I love button locks. I think they're probably the most underutilized locking mechanism out there. But the thing I always find is that they have movement. You know, they have movement when CRKT does them. I've seen customs that had movement. I mean, they just, I don't know if they're hard to just keep in a good locking, keep in a good locking range, I guess, long term, if that lock just deteriorates or if there just develops play. But the Mordax was fantastic, and this one is pretty darn good too. So the lockup is excellent. So good job by Protech executing that and making it a step above other button locks that I've seen. We don't really need, you know, just because you can see it all right here, we don't really need to do 30 seconds of nonstop action. I mean, this is like super easy to do. And the detent is fantastic on this knife where, I mean, you're not really going to be able to open this knife and not open it all the way. So yeah, I mean, as far as fidget factor goes, this knife is going to be beyond excellent. And we'll still do 30 seconds of nonstop action because why not?
And now for 30 seconds of nonstop, unadulterated, uninterrupted button lock Malibu action.
All right. So yeah, so what we have is just a level of action that is top notch. And honestly, if someone were to say that's the 100% only reason why they bought the knife, I would understand. At 180 bucks, like is it worth $180 by itself? I'm not saying that, but I mean that it is so it stands apart from so many other things, so many other competing knives as far as the action goes that I can understand someone just wanting to get the knife only for that reason. So we have that. When we talk about the scales, maybe this is where the boring part comes in. So they're black. I know there's a blue version, I think, as well, but they're black. There's not really a lot of anything going on here. You know, the Mordax that I got to handle had a lot of machining and sort of had this visual texture that was really cool. And I mean, I don't really need bells and whistles on my knives, Jesus, on my knives all the time, guys. But I don't know, there's something about this knife that just isn't resonating with me in the looks, especially with the handle. You know, here's the CG01, one of my favorite aluminum knives from Case and Southern Grind. And you can see there's just some more, like there's more contouring, there's color, there's a pop, there's something about it, you know, and same thing with the 943. You know, the 943 aluminum, but it has like, you know, these ridges, a line, something to it. And I don't know, I'm trying to figure it out myself, guys, because I don't strike myself usually as a guy who needs these extra like fluff frills on a knife. And so when a knife that's really executed well and is good looking in terms of the lines, when it follows up on all the things it's supposed to be, usually it's a home run in my book. And I can say that it's a home run and I believe that, but there's just something about it that's not resonating with me. And I think that's it. You know, I think it's just, it just seems a little boring in terms of like the look of it. Maybe down the road, other variations will come out that will be more appealing, you know, as far as color and maybe a different like DLC coated blade or something like that, machining on that. I'm not sure. But one thing I have noticed, which has almost been like a saving grace for it, is that this aluminum, it shows wear. And so this knife is getting character, and you can see the wear up here at the top by the button lock too. I mean, I haven't hard used this thing. Not really at all. Like I've just carried it a little bit. It had some of these lines on it when it came to me, and it was almost not used at all prior to coming to me. So, you know, I haven't beat up on this thing in any way, shape, or form, but it just gets snail trails the same way like Chris Reeve titanium does. So that's going to be one of those things that will maybe turn some people off to this particular version of it. But for me, it actually adds character and makes the knife a little less boring than it was when I first unboxed it. So yeah, funny enough, you know, maybe collectors aren't going to like that aspect of it, but for me, it's good actually. It gives it a little bit more of a I don't know, a little bit more depth. Ergonomically, it's really good. surprisingly really good because the aluminum, the powder coating on it isn't particularly heavy. So if you're holding a 940 or a 943, better traction on that than on the Malibu. If you're holding a Case and Southern Grind, yeah, probably better traction on this coating than on the Malibu. So it is, you know, it's soft and it's smooth, but it isn't particularly slick though. And so it does end up feeling good in the hand, and the comfort level on the actual frame is excellent. And while we don't have any jimping, it just fits naturally in the hand. So I think, you know, you take a look, my medium to smaller hand of like what you're gonna have, maybe a little bit larger, you'll still be okay. If you got big mitts though, maybe not gonna be the knife for you. So there is that. When we take a look at the top, it looks like there's a backspacer here, but this is actually just the two pieces of aluminum coming together. There's good ridges, really comfortable. I love this texture, this jimping, I guess you could call it. I wish there was, you know, I don't know how you could fit it up here, but like if there was something like this up here on the blade, it'd be awesome, right? But that's good. The pocket clip is pretty darn good too, if you're right-handed and like tip up, which you should like tip up, because why not? If you're not right-handed though, you're not gonna be able to reverse it, so there is that. I'm not right-handed, but I carry my knives in my right pocket, so it is perfect for me. Yeah, I like it. They did the same sort of thing with the Mordax. It worked, right? So overall, guys, I mean, this knife, it works, and it's executed very well. It's simple. It should check every single box that I have, but for some reason, it just isn't the one for me. And again, hopefully this is just a thing with this particular version, and something down the road will strike my fancy a little bit more when it comes to this design. But as it is, I don't know, it just sort of struck me as boring. It's boring, and greatness in terms of execution shouldn't be boring. So I recognize that I might be the one at fault here, but I also recognize that this is a hobby of preference. It is a hobby of opinion, and while my opinion might not align with yours in this case, it's still mine. So hopefully I was able to do a pretty decent and objective review talking about the qualities of the knife while not really injecting that preference in there too much. Hopefully, that was the goal. At the end of the day, who's this knife for? Well, let me tell you who I think this knife is going to be for and who it's not going to be for. First of all, we're running $180, $190, right? The Mordax from Protech, which is their other like manual, their other manual knife, their other really popular one that's on drop.com. The Mordax runs $250 to $270, so $60 to $80 more expensive, something in that range, right? So this knife is definitely going to be for someone who wanted the Mordax and maybe instead wants something a little bit smaller, because this is a smaller knife, wants something a little more utilitarian, sure, and wants something a little bit cheaper, absolutely. Or if you're just a Protech fan and you want something, maybe you're a Protech fan and you can't carry autos where you live, this is definitely the one for you. If you are a button lock fan, a manual button lock fan, then you're gonna like this knife. Are you gonna see value in it versus the $40 CRKTs that are out there? Maybe not, but if you're looking for a high-end EDC user with just a simple design that's going to be able to get stuff done, yes. Yeah. I mean, that's it. I can really see this being like the one knife, the one nice knife that people who maybe have a bunch of budget knives ends up springing for. Are there a ton of other options that are going to be just as good as this at a cheaper price point? Sure. But when you look at the 940, 943, it's only going to be like 20 bucks cheaper. Pretty much same materials in terms of the aluminum. And if you're a big steel person, you're going to like the CV over the S30V. So again, there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of discussion to have as to who is going to really like this. At the end of the day, I don't think there are going to be very many people who purchase this knife and then look back on it and say, God, I wish I hadn't got that. You know? That's what I think. I think that this is going to be a knife that people are going to be happy with, just because when you have execution on this level, it's hard to be angry about it. Now, boredom, sure, you know, and I'm looking at it from a thing where I have a bunch of knives. If I were to purchase this, I just know that I would end up putting it aside and not carrying it that often. It'd get a week of carry time, then I'd be on to the next thing. Whenever I'm purchasing a knife at $180, which isn't very often, I want it to be something that isn't going to just be in the pocket for a few days. I want it to be something that I'm going to keep coming back to over and over and over again. When I spend that much money, I want it to be my next 943. And for me, this knife just isn't my next 943. Could it be yours? I hope so. I hope it is. And if it is, then hold on to the money. And as soon as you see it come available, like, grab it. You know, and maybe I'll be the person down the road, like I said earlier, who's reviewing a different version of this with a different color or different machining or something else about it that just hits me and resonates with me sometime in the future. At this point, it really isn't the one for me, but God, I understand if it does for you. I understand if it is the one for you. That's for sure. All right, guys, so hopefully that all made sense. Any other questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know. I really appreciate it. Thanks very much for watching, and take care. Have a good one.